Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Josephina. I'm an intuitive healer and I talk about healing topics and our spiritual healing, our spiritual growth, as well as our subconscious programming, and more recently my experience with learning that I'm autistic and navigating those new territories. So welcome to my channel. Welcome to everyone who has been along for this journey, and for all the new people that are here. So I have been posting less frequently just because things in my life have been super busy. So yeah, and I'm actually posting this before I'm going away for the week, so that'll be very nice. A much needed vacation for us. I'm very excited about that. So I'm going to add some information about the Calm Collective at the end, so please stay tuned for that at the end. If you're new here, if you can like and subscribe, that'd be awesome. Thank you. So today's video is about feeling guilty for doing the right thing for ourselves, or prioritizing ourselves, choosing ourselves, etc. And this seems to be a really, really big thing for many of us neurodivergent people. I mean, this is something that a lot of people struggle with, those who have been conditioned or programmed to not make space for themselves, or are allowed to have boundaries and things like that, and all of that. So if you're a people pleaser, etc., then this will be something that is a norm for you. But for neurodivergent folks, especially autistic folks, this is like unfortunately much more pronounced, or the word, I guess the word I'm looking for is just going to be more, it's going to be far more present. Sorry, I have like this pressure headache, so it's like really hard to even think right now. So, you know, it's just going to be something that is going to be much more of a struggle. It's going to be more prominent in your life. And so let's talk about what I mean when I say this. So you can put a hand up right now if you're someone who has had people treat you poorly in your life, who have treated you less than, or taken advantage of you, who've been mean to you, who've used you, all these different things. And raise your hand now if you've had people like that in your life and you let them stay. If you still allow them to be around you, if you still stayed friends with them or left the door open for them to have access to you, etc. Raise a hand if that is you, because it's certainly been me, and it's certainly been a lot of people I know. And you may have had friends like this or been in relationships like this. And what I mean by this is that you might have situations where people in your life consistently have shown you that, like, you're not a priority to them, or like I said, they're mean to you, they use you, or have hurt you and things like that. And yet, anytime that you do something to prioritize yourself, or you put a boundary, or you cut someone off who has been crappy to you, etc., why are you sitting with so much guilt and shame around that? This is what we're talking about today in today's video. So the topic, like I said, is the feeling guilty about doing the right things for ourselves. So I know this is something, and this is, I wanted to make a video about this, and I wrote down all these notes the other day about it. And since then, I've had two conversations with one of my best friends and one of, and not one of my partner. We've had conversations about this specific thing, and I just can't, like, it feels like a little concerning to me how much of a problem this is for us. And so what I mean by that is, let's just say I had someone in my life who has, you know, now looking back, has actually been really crappy to me, or has used me, taken advantage of me, or been hurtful or mean or something. And maybe I did something to cut that person out of my life, or you put a boundary, or you block them, or you no longer speak, whatever that is. And yet, the amount of guilt that I feel about doing that, about protecting myself and about placing a boundary or cutting someone off, the amount of guilt that I feel for that, and even like so much time can pass and I struggle with feelings of guilt for having done that. And this is not just me. I know other people who are in this situation. Now, there's different things that come into play here, because you could have been conditioned to be someone who can't place a boundary. Like in my case, I have been someone who wasn't allowed to have my own space and had to kind of, like, my parents had to approve things, growing up with parents who are very, old-fashioned Italian parents, Catholic, and just that very old school patriarchal like view on things. And so I kind of had to adhere to their rules. There was no room for me to put a boundary, and it was just a very like strict household and enmeshment. And so that was my programming. And so that people pleasing, lack of boundary, putting up with the really horrible behavior continued into my adult life with my relationships and my friendships, etc., in workplaces as well. So there's that conditioning present for me. And so I wasn't able to put those boundaries. But the feeling guilty part, I feel like that's something else, because with my partner, for instance, he was not raised in that same environment as me. He had a loving home and he was allowed to have space and boundaries. His parents were supportive, and so it was a very different environment for me. And yet he also experienced that same thing when he was in his past relationship that was not good at all. And so he also spoke about that, like the guilt he would feel for prioritizing himself, and he would feel really guilty and like he was doing something wrong and wasn't able to, like, he really struggled with that. And when, like, same with my friend having, problems with someone in their life, like a family member, and realizing that this person has done significant harm and damage, but yet feeling guilty for speaking up, putting boundaries, and or even having to cut people off and things like that. And so we feel guilty with that. We feel bad about putting boundaries. We have these people in our lives who, when I sit here and think about it, I'm like, my God, this person was like really crappy to me. And I didn't realize then how crappy they were, but I know now. And yet there's still guilt around that. And we're going to talk about why that is, why that might be, and how to change that. Now, I think that if you're someone who was raised in the type of environment I have, you've already been conditioned to allow people in your life that are like this. But what I'm talking about specifically is the guilt and shame we feel when we finally choose ourselves. I think for autistic people or neurodivergent people in general, like, we have always learned and this has to do with programming as well in a different way. We were kind of programmed to exist in boxes that were other people's, in terms of like how we should be, how we should exist, how we should show up as. And so we have learned how to kind of exist in the parameters that have been set forth. And so even though they're not how we would naturally operate and things like that, we have learned how to skillfully, some of us more than others who have been high functioning all these years, to exist within these parameters. Because of that, we are constantly second guessing ourselves, and add delayed processing to that, and you have this beautiful recipe for I want to say self-destruction, but like things that contribute to the destruction of who you are, your peace, and all those things. And so what ends up happening is that we have learned how to fit ourselves in other people's molds and other boxes that are not ours. And so when we make the choice to do something for ourselves and say, this person has been bad to us, I don't like this anymore, I'm going to cut them off, and we, act accordingly, then all of a sudden there's like this guilt, like feeling like this little voice telling you like, oh, maybe you were too harsh, maybe they don't deserve that. And like I don't know about you, but from what I know, like a lot of neurodivergent people, a lot of autistic people actually have very high empathy. And I think that it's my high empathy that has, put me in these really significant problems in the past, because I feel bad for these people who have been really horrible to me. So we are in this position where we are constantly, we don't even know what the right way to exist is sometimes, because we're so used to existing in other people's boxes, that when we make a choice for ourselves, because this does not feel good. I don't know much about what everything should be, like what the right way to be is, but I know that this is not making me feel good. So I'm going to cut this person out of my life. I'm going to say something. I'm going to put a boundary. And so we do that. And then we start second guessing ourselves. We start feeling guilty. We start feeling bad. Was I too harsh? Did I abandon this person? Did I let them down? Like, we start to look at how we're showing up wrong instead of focusing on how wrong that person was. And we've turned it onto ourselves all the time, because we're always trying to adapt and to mold ourselves. I'm thinking of like a plasticine ball and shaping it into like ways to like fit it into everyone else's. So because we constantly have existed in that way, to be able to like, I don't know what that was. Did you hear that? That was weird. To shape ourselves into, to adapt and to fit into other people's boxes and those parameters. So when we start to choose for ourselves, it almost feels like foreign, like we're doing something wrong, and like, is this okay? And so we don't know how, for those of us who are like late diagnosed and who didn't know, and we were raised in this way, always trying to fit into other people's boxes, it's significantly problematic, because we're second guessing ourselves. We're feeling like trying to exist as ourselves is wrong. Like, it feels uncomfortable. It feels wrong. It feels like we did something bad. We have empathy for these people who do bad things to us. And so there's so much that's happening here. And all of that is like this big whirlwind that happens. And so this is why a lot of us struggle with cutting people out of our lives who are not good for us. And we let them overstay their welcome. Let's just say, I don't know what's happening with my hair right now. Sorry. I just see it sticking out. It's bothering me. And so we let them overstay their welcome. We let them have a seat in our lives when they don't deserve it. And then if we make the choice to say something, speak up, put a boundary, or cut them off, we deal with a lot of guilt about it. And we struggle with that feeling internally of, am I being too harsh? Was that the right decision I made? Was I, because we're constantly processing things in our head, we sit with that, and we might ruminate over it over and over again. And even though time has passed, you might be thinking about something you did years ago that you stopped talking to someone or cut them off and feel bad about it. And I remember, like, I've done that before, where I've cut people off in the past, and I've even like went back like years after to like apologize or allow people to come into my life again, because I felt bad about the way things were like ended. But like, I realize now that when I did that, those people had an in back, they had an in, and I just allowed them an open door of mistreating me again, or taking advantage of me, or being crappy to me again, using me, or whatever that was, but whatever it looked like with each relationship. And so part of trying to change that is a process. So when we learn how to unmask and become ourselves, part of that is learning how to exist in our own parameters. And that's a big thing. This is really, really important for those of us who have never existed with our, like, in our own parameters, in our own box, and allowed to exist that way, allowed to be that way. And so this is really, really important that we start to learn how to unmask. And this starts with finding people who are safe to unmask with, whether it's online communities or that one friend or some groups that you meet. If there's some lovely autism meetup groups, if you go to meetup.com or whatever that website is, there's so many on Facebook too. Like, if you don't have internet, maybe they have library ones you can check to see like where there's communities and stuff. But learning how to unmask and exist within your own parameters is going to be so important, so that we can have a contrast of what it feels like to take up space in our own our own box, and not having to adapt or mold ourselves into someone else's box. So that way we can say like, no, this doesn't feel good, and this is how it should be existing, and I'm not okay with this. So no. So that's the first part of it. Secondly is just kind of strengthening that muscle of saying no and talking ourselves off the ledge when we make the choice. Say no, as like kind of like remind yourself, no, that person harmed me. And two things can be true. You can feel bad for someone and feel like that empathy and say, you know, I feel bad, like I hope that I'm not hurting that person. But you can also set the boundary and say, but that person has repeatedly harmed me. That person has repeatedly disrespected me. That person has repeatedly taken advantage of me. That person has repeatedly, like, insert whatever that is for you. And so remind yourself about those things, because it's incredibly important to do that, because we can really get lost in all the little details around that and say, like, I don't want to hurt someone. I don't want to feel like make someone feel bad. I don't want to make someone feel left out, because we've always felt that way in our whole life. We are really sensitive about making other people feel that way, which is why, like, I've done a lot of advocacy my whole life. I've really been good at advocating for others in my life, whether it's, you know, my animal rights activism, labor activism, you know, becoming like a huge labor activist, and also the vice president of my local at work, like doing that kind of stuff and speaking up for others became a huge thing for me because of how much I cared about how other people were treated. And this all stems from, like, because we're not treated that way, because people didn't protect us. And so we become really good at doing that for other people except ourselves. So learning how to be that person for yourself and advocate for yourself is truly important. And when we start to exist in that box as ourselves, when we start to have safe people that we can unmask with, and as we start to finally kind of wrap our head around what is right and wrong in terms of how we should be treated, and that it's not okay, and that we start to, like, kind of learn and realize that, like, these things that people do to us are not okay. And it makes it difficult when you have delayed processing, because oftentimes what happens is when people are not nice to you in this moment, you might not immediately, but oftentimes you won't immediately notice that this person is not being nice to us. You might notice hours later, days later, or much later. And so you look back and you're like, that person was actually really crappy to me. And I didn't realize how much they were crappy to me until much later. And so just have a lot of grace for yourself. But like I said, it's about kind of exercising that muscle of learning how to put a boundary, learning how to say no, learning how to identify what is not nice behavior, and what you want to tolerate and what you won't tolerate. But I'm going to say right now, you don't need to tolerate people's bad behavior. And if you feel like lonely and you don't want to cut people off because you don't have anyone else, then try to find people online, try to find communities like in libraries, try to find meetup groups and things like that. Like, because no one should be subjected to bad behavior because you feel like you have no one else. You might have a friend and it's the only friend you have, and your friend's really shitty to you and they're mean to you and they're not nice and they don't appreciate you and they use you or whatever that is, and that person is not your friend. They're a freaking, like, parasite. You need to get rid of them, because every single one of you are incredible, wonderful souls, and, you know, we get taken advantage of so much, and it's not cool at all. And I think that learning how to arm ourselves with the right tools will help us to be in better environments and so that we can thrive and feel emotionally stable, and, you know, we can feel more stable, but also that we can create, like, very safe connection and friendships with others. And so learning how to change that programming is just a slow process, and we just need to keep doing it. But I'm going to recap and say, if you're struggling with feeling guilt about something and putting a boundary, then you're not alone. Many of us do this. Unfortunately, I still do, with things that I've done like years ago, and I still feel bad about it. But I just remind myself, no, I was totally right in doing that. And that's just that. Like, if people didn't want to be treated like that, then they should have been better to us. And You have the right to say no. You have the right to remove people out of your life. You don't owe them explanations, and you should be valued. You should be revered as a friend, as a loved one. You should be respected, and all of these things. And if you're not getting that from the people around you, then learning how to remove those people out of your life so that you can invite. That's my cat snoring. You can invite others who will treat you that way. It's going to be really important because you deserve to be treated that way. You honestly and truly do. And I mean that. You do deserve to be treated with respect and valued and all those things. And so let me know in the comments if you're someone who has struggled with this your whole life, because I definitely know I have, and I know many people who have. And so this is something that I've really been exercising that muscle and been working on changing that programming and allowing myself to, not feel bad about these things for people who are like not even aligned with me, like people who aren't even like close to me sometimes. Like I'm just like, I don't need to feel bad for these things, like, and trying to like really remove that connection and being intertwined with that energy, because it's like I'm constantly second guessing myself and analyzing my own behavior when it's like maybe those people should be analyzing their own behavior and how they treated me and act accordingly and stuff. So I'm going to leave it at that. If you're someone who has struggled with that, feeling guilty about things, don't struggle. Like, don't feel guilty. Keep doing it. Keep finding the support. Keep validating yourself. Find others who will validate you. People don't need to be in your life who are like not safe people, who don't value you, who don't give back, and all those wonderful things. You deserve that. Okay. So that's my video for today. I hope I got in all the points that I wanted to. And as for the Calm Collective, the next one is happening. Oh my goodness. Let me get the calendar up here on I don't have my phone. Let me see if I can pull it up here. It's back to Friday because that last one was on a Sunday because of an event I went to. So it's going to be the 7th, Friday, November 7th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you haven't come to the Calm Collective, I highly recommend it. It's just a very peaceful, beautiful group hypnotherapy. We meet once a month, and it's an hour online. It's a pay-what-you-can event, and it's honestly, it's the most peaceful and grounding experience. It just feels so lovely, and it's very healing. It allows you to have programming to feel like less anxious and to feel calm, and hence that Calm Collective name. So definitely check it out. There'll be information in the box below about that if you want to check it out. I do recommend it, and yeah, that's it. I'll put a little comment of what someone said about it as well. Anyways, thanks for being here. If you haven't already, like and subscribe, I would appreciate it. Have a wonderful, beautiful day, and I'm off on my vacation, so I shall chat with you later. Bye. Take care.